Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. A couple of other items that are in the news. You may be aware that Hawaii is making a fresh run at legalizing homosexual marriage. And it's been interesting to watch the migration of the LDS Church on this issue. They were very active in 2008. In fact, I would give a good share of the credit to the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, for the victory of Prop 8 in California in 2008. A lot of that happened because the LDS Church got involved in that campaign, and they urged their parishioners to work on behalf of Prop 8 and to vote for Prop 8. In fact, this is what they said back in 2008. This was a letter that was sent out by the LDS First Presidency. This was their admonition in 2008. Do all you can to support the proposed constitutional amendment by donating of your means and time. So LDS Church 2008, do everything you can to help this thing succeed. Now their letter, and the Mormons have a big presence in the state of Hawaii, but they're sending a much, much different signal now to LDS residents in Hawaii in 2013. What they're telling them to do now is study the legislation prayerfully, and then as a private citizen, contact your representative in the Hawaii legislature to express your views about the legislation, whatever those views happen to be. So they are not urging them. In fact, they say in the letter, whether or not you favor the proposed change, we hope that you will urge your elected representatives to include in any such legislation a strong exemption for people and organizations of faith. So in other words, it looks to me, and if we have any LDS listeners, I'd be interested in your reactions. It looks to me like the LDS Church has virtually abandoned the fight to protect natural marriage. They're not engaged in the effort, in the cultural battle to protect and preserve natural marriage. They've left the field, and they have retreated now to the citadel where all they're trying to protect is religious liberty. So they've and this is what a lot of, you're seeing this with other pro-family groups, have virtually done the same thing. We've had some major pro-family organizations, if I mentioned the names, you would obviously know who I'm talking about, who have gone in what appears to me to be a pretty significant retreat. They've left the field of battle, and they've retreated to these fortresses where now all they're trying to do is protect religious liberty from the encroachment of the homosexual agenda. They're no longer out there trying to defend the institution of marriage as God created it. So we'll see how all of that plays out. Even the Pope has sent some uncertain signals. He's been talking in a major interview about how he says the Roman Catholic Church has been obsessed with the issue of abortion and homosexuality. And so he seems also to be pulling back the resources of the Roman Catholic Church. It's almost as if the Roman Catholic Church is now leaving the field of battle. He did make some comments yesterday supporting the sanctity of human life, but he admitted in this interview that he had been largely silent on the issue of the sanctity of life and the issue of homosexuality and the issue of marriage since he has become the Pope. So he apparently is kind of pulling the resources of the Roman Catholic Church back from cultural engagement at a very unfortunate time. Anyway, honored to welcome to our decision maker line Bradley Dean. Bradley's been a guest on this program before. He is the founder and executive director of You Can Run, But You Cannot Hide International. Bradley, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you back on the program. And the reason I wanted to bring you on is to talk about something that happened with you and your group up at the Minnesota State Fair. So walk us through what happened there.
Well, we have had a booth at the Minnesota State Fair over the last 8 years, and we've handed out hundreds of thousands of tracts over the process of those last 8 years. And apparently, since they passed an illegal act called homosexual agenda concerning gay marriage in the state of Minnesota, they've been emboldened to go ahead and attack our ministry now. So the first thing they did this year, Brian, was target our booth out of the thousands and thousands of booths that are at the Minnesota State Fair. CBS affiliate WCCO got involved, and they came over to our booth and said, we heard there was protest, and when you ask our street teams about the protest, we couldn't find any protesters. And so they went off from that to, they springboarded it into, we heard you're a hate group. And so we had basically brought up the fact that Morris Dees from the SPLC, the founder, used to actually back the Ku Klux Klan. And then we began to share with them some of the things that Mark Potok of the Southern Poverty Law Center said. He said sometimes the press will describe us as monitoring hate crimes and so on. He said, I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, to completely destroy them. So, Brian, once we began to give them information, they didn't want any of the information. So what they did is decided to give us about a $75,000 hit on free advertisement. So they polarized our booth, and we just wanted to thank the state-run media for that, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have had all the people come by and high-five us and tell us thank you for taking a stand concerning traditional marriage.
Well, in fact, I think you had an advocate, it turns out, in the general manager of the state fair, Jerry Hammer. I mean, a lot of times you'll have these public officials that'll come down on the side of homosexual advocates and lobbyists and activists, but in this case, it seemed like the general manager did a pretty fair job in handling this.
He did. He just basically, put the hammer down on it and said, listen, if you don't like it, then go to someone else's booth. Well, since then, Brian, and by the way, he was an advocate, and by the way, I was surprised to see his response, which was very, we welcomed it, all the way around as far as the ministry team goes, so we really appreciated how he took a stand. But what's happened since then is a couple days ago, I'd actually received some news that a petition was started by St. Paul resident Michael Chergosky. And Michael Chergosky put himself up. He feigned himself as someone that was a part of the Minnesota State Fair, which, in fact, we just found out yesterday after calling the State Fair, they have no idea who this individual is. And they had posted on change.org, George Soros-funded outlet, to begin to petition us to make sure that we never go to the State Fair again. And we had went to his website, his Facebook, and we only found out that he had a couple responses. And by the way, this is usually the response. When people pull the curtain back on these agendas, you're going to find out that you're dealing with a very, very, very small minority of people. But what they like to do is use the state-run media to try to make themselves look a lot bigger than what they really are.
Yeah, and they just make a lot of noise and scream discrimination and just scream homophobia, scream bigotry. They'll get buy-in from the media that likes a story, and so their influence is sort of exaggerated by a very compliant media.
Oh, in every sense of the word, Brian. I mean, you know that as well as I do. And it's interesting. It's one of Saul Alinsky's tactics, by the way, is to make themselves a lot bigger than what they really are. And they depend upon people to believe their fabricated, contrived lies. And if the American people would realize that it is fabricated and contrived, I'll tell you what, it would be over for them and their agenda in 24 hours or less.
Well, listen, Bradley, you guys do a great work. You and your organization do a great work going into schools and doing assemblies. You've been run out of more respectable schools than anybody in America, but you never back down. You never retreat. Appreciate what you do, especially for the youth of America. So thank you for taking some time to chat with us. Even though a George Soros-funded website went after you, you're living to tell about it. So thank you for taking time to talk to us, Bradley, and God bless you and your ministry.
Yep, thank you, Brian. We appreciate you, man.
All right, Bradley Dean, founder and executive director of You Can Run, But You Cannot Hide International. So homosexual activists trying to take them out of the Minnesota State Fair unsuccessfully. Now, I would like a call from any Roman Catholic listeners. I'd love to hear from any LDS listeners we have that want to weigh in on kind of the change in tactics on the part of the LDS Church toward the marriage issue, the striking difference between what they did in 2008 in California, what they're doing now in 2013. 2008, the LDS Church said, look, you need to do everything in your power to help defend natural marriage. 2013, message from the same hierarchy, say, study the issue, make up your own mind. We're not going to tell you which way to vote. Just whatever you do, be sure you try to protect some shred of religious liberty in the process. So those of you that may be involved in the LDS Church, I'd love to hear from you how you feel about, do you see this change in kind of tactic, this change in emphasis on the part of the LDS hierarchy or not? And then also from any Roman Catholic listeners, we partner with the Roman Catholic Church on the sanctity of life, the sanctity of marriage. We've been able to count on them in the culture wars, evangelicals have, to be an ally with us, because the Catholic Church has always sent a very, very clear and unambiguous message about both the sanctity of life and the sanctity of marriage. And yet this new Pope seems to be setting a different tone for the Roman Catholic Church. And I would like to hear from Roman Catholic listeners. If you'd like to call in, the number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. LDS callers about what you see as the difference in emphasis and orientation of the LDS Church. And then those of you that are Roman Catholics, do you see the change in emphasis on the part of this Pope, and how do you feel about that? It really looks to me like he's disengaging from the culture battle and is backing off of the clear signal that they have been sending by saying, and the word obsessed, that is the Pope's word, that the church has been obsessed with gays, abortion, and contraceptives, and that they need to find a new balance, the Pope says. Now, in my view, the Roman Catholic Church has always been very balanced on this issue. They've always sounded a note of mercy, a note of compassion, a note of grace, a note of forgiveness, offering the gift of eternal life, appealing to gays to repent, turn from their sin, and find life in Jesus Christ through the ministry of the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, to me, they've always had a proper balance. I've been reading some of the responses today to what the Pope has said by homosexual activists, and they are gleeful. They think this is a huge win for the cause of the homosexual agenda. And here's a piece from the New York Times article this morning. There has been a low rumble of discontent from some Catholic advocacy groups and even from some bishops who have taken note of his silence on abortion and gay marriage. The Pope said, "I've never been a right-winger," so again, he seems to be distancing himself from conservatives. And then remember this last summer, he said this: "A person once asked me in a provocative manner if I approved of homosexuality. I replied with another question, tell me, when God looks at a gay person, does he endorse the existence of this person with love or reject and condemn this person? We must always consider the person." So it seems to me that the Pope's message to homosexuals is neither do I condemn you. But the message of Jesus to the homosexual is neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. Focal Point, AFR Talk.